Hello, I'm Chris Sirota, Product Manager for Verisk's Emerging Issues. And yes, it's that time of year again for the Bracket Challenge. And believe it or not, it's year number 12. 12 years we've been doing the Bracket Challenge. And once again, we're here with the team to help you make your picks quadrant by quadrant. Let's get started. Verisk's Emerging Issues, your source for vital market intelligence on the evolving risks and opportunities facing insurers and risk managers that can help inform product development and strategic planning. Verisk's Emerging Issues. The Emerging Issues team here at Verisk is responsible for researching the evolving risks and opportunities facing insurers and risk managers today. So, what's the Bracket Challenge? Good question. Well, it's a lighthearted way to look at some serious topics and take the pulse of the industry and see which emerging risks are top of mind. It's a kind of tournament style matchup, pitting 32 risks against each other until only one remains. As we mentioned, this is year number 12, believe it or not. And what have we learned from past challenges? Well, one example we could take a look at is autonomous vehicles. Some years they've come out at top or at close to the top. Other years they've just dropped out in the first round. That's a good example of how a risk may ebb and flow in the minds of insurance pros. Last year is also a good example. It saw the rise of generative AI as a major industry concern. So let's break down the bracket with the help of the Emerging Issues team. Now we're going to go through the health quadrant of the 2025 Emerging Issues Bracket Challenge, and we have Catherine Lynch from the Emerging Issues team to walk us through some of the highlights. So, hey, Catherine, how are you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Good, good. So before we break down the 2025 bracket in more detail, what was the top pick of the health quadrant back in 2024? Help us out with this.
Yeah, in 2024, microplastics was the top pick out of the health quadrant, and it was the issue's debut year, so that certainly gave us a signal to dig deeper into this topic throughout the year. And we did. We reviewed some of the health studies that have linked microplastics with elevated levels of heart disease and examined some of the industries that have been identified as partially responsible for microplastics. These include food and beverage companies, textile producers, and tire makers. But one of the biggest concerns right now for insurers specifically is lawsuits that have targeted both plastic producers and the firms that may use plastic or plastic packaging. We may see more of this in the future. All this is to say, we wouldn't be surprised if microplastics had another strong finish this year.
Okay, so microplastics is paired up against avian flu, which is a difficult matchup. What are you watching there?
Yeah, avian flu is not a new issue per se, but it is new to the bracket. It's something we've been watching, especially as it's jumped between animals and farm workers. Researchers are concerned it's a mutation away from being highly pathogenic to humans. And this is an issue, like with other pandemics, that doesn't have the potential to just affect human health, but also more broadly supply chains and more specifically the food supply. However, because it's such a far reaching issue, there's no singular data point to watch it spread. So we've done some research on how the Department of Agriculture and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention are tracking it. It'll be interesting to see how it does up against microplastics.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so, what are the other new additions to the health quadrant?
Kratom is another new entrant. It's a natural substance that gives users a stimulant and opioid-like effect, and it's not federally regulated, though some states have banned it. It's been the subject of some wrongful death lawsuits in the US that resulted in at least one nuclear verdict. However, this isn't the only concern with kratom. The product is often mislabeled and has caused at least one case of foodborne illness. And this is a common pattern for substances that sometimes fall through regulatory cracks. And the Emerging Issues team has started to track these select lawsuits, adverse events, and incidents of foodborne illnesses for kratom and three other substances.
Oh, you're tracking this information?
Yeah, we're tracking it in our novel psychoactive substance tracker. We're maintaining it regularly with new incidents from the FDA, along with media reports of these lawsuits.
And so let's a little bit on the kratom is paired up against cannabis, a long-standing bracket contender, as we all know. It's been around a lot longer, at least in our challenge. How has it performed in the past?
Yeah, cannabis has been in the bracket for a while, but recently it hasn't been out of the second round in the last few years. It seems that something the industry is potentially waiting on is the new farm bill that could clarify some of the haze surrounding its legal status. However, Congress has delayed the new farm bill until 2025.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's good to know. And what about food additives? They're also a new risk in this challenge. Why was the topic added?
Yeah, food additives are very timely. They may be linked to some possible adverse health impacts, and the FDA, as you know, recently revoked its authorization for red dye number 3. We're watching what impact, if any, this might have on litigation in the food and beverage space. And food additives is paired against a topic that's certainly spent some time in court, and that's the opioid crisis, which we are still seeing settlements being paid from some major pharmaceutical companies, and litigation has expanded further down the supply chain to pharmacies.
And lastly, what we have Forever Chemical known as PFAS, a previous winner for those who have been following. That's up against phthalates, spelled with a PHTH, a new contender. What made phthalates bracket worthy? Help us out with this.
Yeah, phthalates are often called the everywhere chemicals, and the issue is conveniently paired up against PFAS, which are known as the forever chemicals. So it's truly a pick your poison decision. But all jokes aside, phthalates are found in many plastic and personal care products, and some producers are facing lawsuits due to their harmful health effects, one of those being an increase in diabetes in some women. And PFAS, of course, is a major concern for the industry. Verisk Arium Liability Modeling Group estimated that settlements from environmental contamination related claims from PFAS pollution, especially those regarding contaminated drinking water, have already reached $18 billion in the US. It'll be interesting to see how far PFAS makes it in this year's bracket.
Thank you so much, Catherine, for walking us through some of the highlights of some of the matchups in the health quadrant in, again, our 2025 Emerging Issues Bracket Challenge. Thanks so much, Catherine.
Thank you.
So we have Greg Scobletti here to help us walk through the tech quadrant and highlight some parts of that quadrant to help you make your picks in the 2025 Emerging Issues Bracket Challenge. Greg, let's talk tech. Gen AI, artificial intelligence, was the pick in 2024. What might we see in 2025? Please help us.
Yeah, that's right, Chris. Gen AI was our top pick last year. And this year, we actually expanded the category to include artificial intelligence more generally alongside generative AI, because, of course, there is a lot more to the AI story than simply generative AI technology. Now, this is a very fast moving subject, but I think a lot of the baseline trends that we identified last year remain consistent in 2025. This is a tech that is being broadly trialed and adopted across a number of different industries, and it's not necessarily just high tech industries that may be looking to onboard AI solutions. We've seen mining companies, agriculture, utility scale, infrastructure. Everyone is seemingly interested and excited about AI technology. But, and this is particularly true, I think, with generative AI and large language models, there is still a concern about hallucinations, about errors, and downstream of those errors, the potential for liability concerns that may flow from the use of this technology.
Anything else notable in the tech quadrant that you can help us out with?
Yes, we also added battery energy storage systems as a new category. So, battery energy storage, these are generally lithium ion based battery systems that can be used for a range of different applications. So, for homes, for businesses, all the way up to grid scale power utilities. Now, battery energy storage systems can be used as backup power, they can be used to capture renewable energy sources like solar and wind that may not be available at all hours of the day. And if you scale it up to a utility scale size, these are technologies that can provide improved grid stability. Utilities can use them for price arbitrage. It really depends on the market that you're in. Now, we do like to say on the emerging issues team, right, that emerging risks can be both threats or opportunities. And I think battery energy storage systems are a pretty good example of this. So, this is a tool, this is a technology that, at least in principle, should help improve resilience at both the homeowner level for those implementing the technology, up to commercial properties that may be implementing battery energy storage systems as backup generation power, all the way up to the grid. But it may also introduce a few risks as well. So, whenever we talk about lithium ion batteries, there's obviously concern about a fire risk. And as we're recording this, we're recording this several weeks after a massive fire at what is the world's, or what was the world's largest battery energy storage facility in California. We've documented numerous times that lithium-ion battery fires, while they're a relatively infrequent event, they can be very challenging to manage due to the nature of how lithium-ion batteries burn. So these can be very high severity events. And with so much of our internet connected infrastructure today, battery energy storage systems may also present cyber vulnerabilities to the owner. So this could be cyber vulnerabilities at the homeowner level, all the way up through commercial properties and out to the grid itself. One other item I just want to highlight on the tech side is 3D printed construction. So 3D printing has been in past brackets, but this year we expanded the category to include 3D printed construction. So this is a trend that we're starting to see at both the residential and commercial scale of using large 3D printers to create structures.
Oh, wow. Wow. Well, so why is this?
Well, I mean, obviously, desktop 3D printing and different forms of additive manufacturing, as it's also called, that continues to grow in a variety of settings, such as building automotive components. But larger scale 3D printing projects are also being used for residential and commercial construction. Now, this is a very new trend. It's still very early days. We estimate that there are under 300 homes in the US that may have been 3D printed instead of conventionally built, and only a very small handful of commercial structures. And like battery energy storage systems, this is a technology that may pose both a threat and an opportunity for the insurance industry. So if we think of it on the opportunity side, there is evidence to suggest that 3D printed structures are more resilient structures, so they can better withstand wildfires, for example, because they don't use as much wood. These are typically cement buildings that use very little wood and no nails. There are also, there have been reports at least, that these are structures that can endure high winds. They may be able to better resist termite damage as well as earthquake damage. They also may be safer for construction crews to work with and less environmentally intense. It may be a less environmentally intense way to build a structure. But like any new technology, we do have a lot of unanswered questions, such as the potential long-term durability of these structures, what it costs to repair or replace damages to a 3D printed building, and questions around the substances used in the printing. So you need to create generally these bespoke mixtures of cement and other materials, and there's a question about what exposure to those materials may bring. So still a lot of questions on this technology, but a very interesting emerging technology that we're following on the team.
Well, so much to consider with that particular topic, 3D printed construction this time, correct? In
That's
the
correct.
quadrant. So again, check out that tech quadrant, and I certainly hope that Greg's highlighting of some of these points will help you make your picks in the 2025 Emerging Issues Bracket Challenge. Thanks so much, Greg. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Okay, to preview the environmental and societal quadrant, we're going to talk to Kevin Sullivan from the Emerging Issues team. Kevin, how are you?
Good, thanks, Chris.
Okay, let's dive right in there. Let's talk about, well, first and foremost, wildfires emerged as a top pick in this quadrant last year. This year, wait a minute, it's not there. What gives?
Well, Chris, wildfires will, of course, remain a key risk to watch throughout 2025, especially in the aftermath of the destructive California wildfires. Climate change, however, encompasses a variety of potential challenges, many of which overlap and dovetail with different priorities and interests for the insurance industry. You'll notice that sea level rise and mega droughts are also missing this year. Both of these topics have appeared in past brackets. This is just to reinforce that research increasingly links these associated climate change challenges together. Take, for example, the subject of hydroclimate volatility. It's a bit of a mouthful, but in short, it refers to sudden, large, or frequent transitions between very dry and very wet conditions. It's referred to more colloquially as climate whiplash, and this phenomenon can contribute to a variety of climate-related challenges: drought, flooding, and yes, wildfires. and is expected to increase alongside man-made climate change, according to at least some recent research. There is, just as another example, another growing body of research exploring possible linkage between climate change and earthquake frequency. Now, a recent Colorado State University study, for instance, found that seismic cycles could shift and become more volatile in areas where faults had been historically held in place by the weight of glaciers, which are, of course, now under threat of recession due to rising temperatures. So what we're seeing increasingly is overlap in all of these topics, and they all merit monitoring by the emerging issues team.
What about moving on to something a little bit more on the societal side of the quadrant? What about social inflation? It's certainly a buzzy topic across the industry, and it's advanced to the second round of last year's bracket. So, can you talk about a little bit about this?
Indeed, and in this case, we sort of did the opposite. We, in fact, narrowed our lens a bit to take a closer look at the ongoing concerns associated with an element of social inflation, third-party litigation funding. And just real quick on that, a 2024 RAND study, for instance, highlighted a per capita increase in state court filings over the past 10 plus years, noting a 10% increase in the practice between 2012 and 2019, this being across 19 states. The authors of that study also found that plaintiff win rates increased by more than 10% during that same stretch of time. Sort of zooming that out a little bit, more than $15 billion in combined assets remained under management by third-party actors involved in commercial litigation in the U.S. That's in 2023, that according to one analysis. And this is despite what some analysts have observed as an overall contraction in the practice over that same stretch of time. There's still a tremendous amount of litigation out there at stake. And of course, third-party litigation funding is widely believed to be one of the main catalysts of social inflation. And since 2022, there has been an increase in bills either proposed or enacted at the state level regarding TPLF. This is, of course, why the Emerging Issues team has launched its third-party litigation tracker, did so just last year, to better help customers navigate this activity and stay on top of these activities at the state level. The tracker is updated repeatedly, quarterly throughout the year. It's the most updated and relevant information for our customers.
What else is notable in this quadrant?
Well, Chris, ESG litigation is a new risk for the challenge this year. It's certainly not a new risk, but it's a new face on the Emerging Issues Bracket Challenge. There are, of course, ongoing lawsuits around environmental, social, and governance commitments, but there has also been some pushback against ESG investments over the past year or so. Some observers have noted a corporate pullback from ESG commitments, but shareholder activity around them still appears to remain strong, at least according to some analysts, making this an important issue to keep an eye on throughout 2025. We're watching economic inflation as well, as it remains a stubborn challenge for not only Americans, but people all over the world. This is an area where geopolitical tensions, supply chain challenges posed, for instance, by avian flu and the risk that could pose to poultry supply chains, just for one example. Trade tensions, these could, according to some economists, drive a future surge in inflation. So we've also seen that the new administration has taken a more aggressive or proactive approach on tariff policy, for example, and news reports suggest that this will only continue over the next 4 years, and some reports suggest that this too could have an effect on inflation. Closely related and also new to the bracket is federal deregulation. The new administration has outlined some big potential changes to the federal bureaucracy, what this could mean for a variety of emerging risks, from PFAS remediation to infrastructure investment, will merit close monitoring by the industry and by our team throughout the year.
This hopefully will help our listeners to look at their bracket challenge and make their picks with more knowledge. Thank you so much, Kevin, for walking us through some of the matchups in the environmental and societal quadrant within Emerging Issues Bracket Challenge 2025. Thanks so much, Kevin. Appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you, Chris.
So we're going to talk about the mobility quadrant of the Emerging Issues 2025 Bracket Challenge. And we have Greg Skolbloody from the team to talk about mobility. This is a quadrant that encompasses both auto and vehicle concerns. Autonomous vehicles, actually, they were it was the top pick in the quadrant in 2024. So where'd it go, Greg? Help us. Walk us through this and highlight some other things in the quadrant for us. Greg?
Yes, that's right. So astute observers will notice that there is no autonomous vehicle category in the 2025 bracket. Instead, what we've done is disaggregated it. We split it between robo-taxis and robo-trucks. So robo-taxis, obviously a major focus of interest in the autonomous vehicle market over the last several years. They took some major strides, we think, in 2024. Additional cities came online, but they also took a step back. There was a major robo-taxi firm owned by a major US automaker that announced they were actually scaling back their autonomous vehicle ambitions for the year. So again, this is a technology that over the course of a decade has ebbed and flowed. And I think we saw that quite clearly last year, at least in the robo-taxi market. Now, robo-trucking, a bit behind where robo-taxis are, at least as far as commercial deployments are concerned, but routes are also beginning to come online for commercial deliveries involving robo-trucks or autonomous trucks. Collectively, what these commercial deployments have done is basically give us a baseline to try to begin to assess the safety of these vehicles relative to human drivers. Now, we mentioned this last year in a webinar that we produced on the 2024 bracket, but the data that we're starting to see from the US government, while it's imperfect, is painting a provisional picture that I think is at least encouraging from the safety perspective with these vehicles, although there's still a lot of uncertainty. And meanwhile, we do have questions around the regulatory framework that these vehicles may be operating in. That may be changing, at least potentially, as well at the federal level. And this could be something to watch, specifically around the collection and publication of incident data around autonomous vehicles. So today, Chris, as you well know, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, they collect and publish autonomous vehicle safety data through a program with automakers and others who may be engaged in testing and operating these vehicles on public roads. But there are some observers who have noted that the new administration may want to change or even possibly curb this data collection and reporting. Again, we don't know for a fact, so it's something we're keeping an eye on. But obviously, that data is does provide a very important insight into the performance of these vehicles.
Is there anything else notable in our mobility quadrant this year, 2025?
Yes, well, we're also focused on so-called micro mobility risks. These are e-bikes and e-scooters, also been a staple of the Emerging Issues Bracket Challenge in years past. Now, obviously, when it comes to e-bikes, e-scooters, anything that is powered by a lithium-ion battery, there is a concern about battery fires. In cities like New York, for example, which is in our backyard, your hometown, there have been numerous very serious fires and sometimes fatalities that have been linked to lithium-ion batteries used in these micromobility devices, so used in e-bikes and e-scooters. Now, sometimes these batteries are reportedly counterfeits, or maybe they were improperly repaired or damaged before they were charged. But this micromobility story is not just about fires, but also about injury risk as well. So there was research published last year documenting e-bike injuries, for example. And according to this research, those injuries have doubled every year from 2017 to 2022. And e-scooter injuries rose by around 45% annually. And no surprise, you're seeing hospitalization rates also increasing, though not as sharply, alongside these injuries. Now, these injuries may be occurring from individual owners of an e-bike or e-scooter, but also possibly from rental services and community bike or scooter sharing services that some municipalities and cities may be standing up. So there's a lot more to the micromobility story than just simply lithium-ion battery fires.
Oh, wow. Okay. Thank you for walking us through that. And I certainly hope these highlights help our listeners to make their picks in the 2025 Emerging Issues Bracket Challenge. And this was a description for the mobility quadrant. Thanks so much, Greg.
You're quite welcome.
And that wraps it up for our walkthrough of the 4 quadrants of the Emerging Issues Bracket Challenge for 2025. Thanks so much to the whole team. We certainly hope they helped you think about your picks. And of course, you can make your picks at core.verisk.com/EI. That's E like emerging, I like issues. And don't forget, you can make sure that you don't miss our announcement of the results in early April by signing up for our weekly newsletter. Thank you very much for listening. Stay well, stay informed, and have a great day. Verisk's Emerging Issues, your source for vital market intelligence on the evolving risks and opportunities facing insurers and risk managers that can help inform product development and strategic planning. Verisk's Emerging Issues.